And welcome to System.debug. We are your co-host, Megan, and the awesome.
Nate Pepper. How are you doing?
Welcome. And this week we are going to be talking to you about one of your favorites.
Custom settings.
Yeah, custom settings. Wow, it just keeps wanting to turn on in the background. So yeah, custom settings, man. Custom settings and custom metadata types. And we're also going to be talking about so much more. Yeah. Yeah. We are pretty much talking about how to make your code configurable. Pretty awesome stuff, all. Pretty awesome. So to kick us off, Nate, why don't you get us started?
You got it. So let's see. Gosh, custom settings. You remember when those came on the scene, right? What was that? Like
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Way back.
8-9 years ago, something. Pretty shortly
Yeah.
after I started in 2010. And it was nice to have sort of an S object, but yet not an S, like not a database table, but a way to configure your applications, right? And customizations. What do I get? I get settings to start off with. Should we start with what was before there?
Before there, I mean, we used custom objects back when code first came out and labels. Yeah. And just using a custom object to try to control things and then having to use the standard security that came with an object and reconfiguring that. And trying to make that work, and also the fact that it was available to everybody that could then need access. They could also see it, unless you hid the tab, but they could still find a way to it. Yeah.
So yeah, way back in the day, there was sort of app configuration beyond translation was kind of non-existent, right? And so you would have times where maybe you'd find yourself wanting to, or actually making a custom label to store something with a single value, as opposed to something that actually needs to be translated across languages. But yeah, custom labels. I remember in oh gosh, what was it? In Aura, custom labels were supported. Is that it? Or no, Visual Force. Visual Force, you could just use $label, the name of your label. Were they supported in Aura? I believe that's where
labels. Yeah, you totally could. You could use them in labels.
And LWC.
Or you could use them. Yeah.
Yeah, like straight up in the markup.
LWC, I don't know. I haven't done much with LWC.
Right. Those are starting to get a little harder to surface. But even back when, gosh, what was it, 2014, I was doing some work with Visual Force remoting. Actually, it was really Sencha EXT.js and Sencha Touch apps. And really the only way that you do that is you make a Visual Force page and you load your app, your third-party JavaScript app with a static resource, of course. But then once you've sort of loaded that and hoisted it in, we were able to reference custom labels in the Visual Force markup. But then what we would do is essentially go, maybe not window dot, but window dot some object equals either itself or a new object, so that you don't overwrite everything you've got. And then we would have sort of like a dictionary where we would load all those custom labels from Visual Force into JavaScript so that you could use it in the Visual Force page and in the EXT app. But really, unless it's been a long time since I've dealt with internationalization, and so I probably haven't seen custom labels proper in 3 or 4 years. It's
So I'm using custom labels on my current project. We're doing multi-language. We are using the translation workbench and custom labels, so pretty exciting stuff. Whoa, what was that? Freaking me out, man. You're freaking me out.
Album artwork from Papa Ute's Stromae. There it is. Sorry. I am logged.
Gotcha.
I'm logged into my daddy Google account, so that's my dad and son artwork. You want to talk really quick about? We're just going to touch on these, but yes, you have custom labels which are programmatically accessible, pretty robust. But then also there is a way to totally rename your tabs and objects. So, if, for instance, one of my current projects, the opportunity stage name is actually development status, which is really fun to find in the object manager.
Now you're talking so you're talking about renaming the fields or the values, the field itself on a standard object?
The field names that you see in the UI, right?
For a standard object, yeah, that's the rename tabs area. Definitely one of those things to think about before you do it. It's one of those that affects everybody type of things. Yeah.
And then also translation workbench is a way that without custom labels and needing to access those programmatically, you can just say, account. Many of the standard objects and fields, they know what account is in Spanish, for Latin America.
So
Spain.
Certain things are inside the translation workbench. That's the way you got to think about it. There are certain things in the translation workbench that are not in the custom labels. For example, your help text is in there, the text that is on your flow screens, the information that is, for your pick list values, those are found within your translation workbench. There is specific information found there. The rename tabs and labels is for when you are changing the actual name of accounts to something else. The custom labels are for when you are accessing something that is, for example, additional text that is not part of standard functionality that you want to translate is probably the best way to put it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of all the three, when you're looking to do something changing language related, it's either rename tabs and labels, translation workbench, and custom labels. But that doesn't get into app config really, right? It's just the same stuff, and it's which language you want it in, or do you call a duck, or do you call it a goose? I was gonna be more witty.
Right. It's all good. It's all good.
So then on the scene
we knew what you were going for.
Yeah. So then custom settings come on the scene, and maybe Meg, you want to tell us about how did that change your I made a custom S object to do this and now I don't have to crowd?
So custom settings are super cool, both types, both hierarchy and list, although list isn't as popular anymore that we have custom metadata types. But at first the list custom settings were like your first option to have access to an object that wasn't an object. It didn't have, security. I mean, now it's either access or no access. It was more of a private or public. Now you can go by profile. It didn't count against, your query. And you had it in setup so users couldn't get there and break things, or try to make edits, or try to modify things that you were using for an actual configuration. They don't have owners without being a parent child, and it's like being able to to have an object that is a special superpower object that has most field types, but is, off limits and, has different types of, you know, uh, rules that go along with it. And so by having it hidden in setup and keeping it away from users, code was able to access it. Admins and developers were able to access it, but end users weren't able to go in there. You weren't able to have the uh, formulas, and you weren't able to have pick lists, but you were still able to have most other field types. You couldn't have relationships. But I would say my favorite type of custom settings, even to this day, were hierarchy custom settings. And I would say that specifically as an administrator and somebody that's heavy on config, um, I think that those can be the most powerful types of settings for any declarative user to be using. And they can have, the ability to control things where they used to hard code in IDs, hard code in access for specific users, specific profiles. And if you're not using a hierarchy custom setting, think of it this way. You have an org wide value that is, this is the organization setting. And then you can say, and I want to give this profile this type of, access and setting, and these are their values for their fields. And then you can go down even a level further and say, and then these users, I want to give these values. And it always goes for the most granular value for the person that is, it's looking at. So if you have an org setting that I am a user that is listed, it'll take my user value. One of the most popular things that I use it for is turning on and off validation rules for when loading data. Same thing with triggers, turning them on and off. And then having a setting that can be easily managed and manage all rules in one place instead of having to go in and turn off all rules. Find it super, super handy. And it was how I first started playing around with them before I started getting into, the platform and the deep dive into the side where I could start playing around with, Apex and Visual Force, and later to start playing around with Aura and seeing what I can do.
That's actually a huge use case. I mean, that's, people run into that much more often than I'm guessing, like, oh, well, the company has a company LinkedIn account, but if you've got your personal level one set, you can log into some integration with your personal profile or something. Nice.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see. Anything to touch on before we start talking about the road to, I guess, sort of not the, what do they call it when you twilight something? What's that for expression? It's being sunsetted. Not that custom settings are being sunsetted, but I noticed it got really hard to make list custom settings a while back. What's going on there?
Yeah, so that's where Salesforce is doing that big push for you to start using your custom metadata types. Custom metadata types are deployable. They are, able to, have the custom fields, have records, do a lot of the same things, but, you now no longer have to, deal with that fact that they're data that you have to deal with. And Nate, why don't you tell us more about the powers that come along with development with custom metadata type?
Sure. So when custom settings came on the scene, we saw a few things alleviated. Number one, no org-wide default, like separate security thing entirely. You either essentially have access to, so like app config or whatever you needed for that, or you didn't.
Customized application.
Yeah, customized application, or you didn't. So the nice thing is that it got outside of that, data and security model for records, which makes sense for database records and not app config necessarily. However, you've got a custom setting. It's got, fields. It's like an object definition, similar to an S object. And I will note that all custom settings and custom metadata types, which we'll talk about next, are all, when you pull down their definitions, they come into the object folder, just like a standard custom S object. But the thing that you were missing is that you've got a custom setting, it's got all these fields, and you make records that help your app configure or whatnot. But then you make a fresh sandbox and there's no records in there. So you would need to create them. In a test, like, yes, they wouldn't be there in a test class either, even if you've loaded them into a Scratch org or sandbox. You need to create them in the test. Not too horrible. I think we're all pretty used to the, like, yeah, I got to make all my test data, because then you're just focusing on what data you need for that test or for that class's tests. But no way to deploy it. You've got to have a post install script once you get the object, the custom setting and fields in there. Enter custom metadata. I remember I was so confused because when they made an example or a demo when custom metadata types came out, there was some weird pick list thing, and I never wrapped my head around that completely. Like pick list values on that.
The state and country pick list was what they always did.
Yeah, and I just thought, I'm just not getting this. And so what happened is they came out with custom metadata types, and essentially are all they're all lists, like it mirrors a list custom setting. So what you do is you make a custom metadata type, which is like an object definition, right? Similar to custom setting. And then you make records for it, but the records are metadata, right? You can actually deploy them. Oh, we forgot to mention, with custom settings, you can query them with SOCL, but you can also access them through Apex classes. It's got its own, custom metadata, custom setting name, _c.getAll or get by name or this and that. So what happens right there with custom metadata types, let's say you had a custom setting that was helping your application have a list of valid values for some custom UI dropdown or something. That's in new sandboxes as soon as you refresh it. That's in Scratch orgs when you deploy the records and the object and fields to it. And so now with that, you can even package up into GP or something that you put on the App Exchange. It's going to go into a client's org. You can deploy those records, and then afterwards they can tweak them or add. Let's say they want more values in that custom UI pick list. They can add those, but you're able to get it in there initially with so much fewer post-deploy steps, right? Nobody likes a mile-long list of pre and post-deploy steps. So yeah, go for it.
So what are some of one thing about custom metadata types, unlike the custom settings, is they can have relationships. And I was going to ask, what are some of the advantages of the relationships to a custom metadata type or an entity definition?
Well, right, with custom settings, there's not even pick lists on custom setting, right?
Nope.
Your field types are much more limited. With custom metadata types, you can look up to, is it only another custom metadata type?
You can look up a custom metadata type, or you can look up a bunch of different objects, but there are a number of objects that are off limits. You can't look up a profile, you can't look up a perm set,
right?
And you can't look up field relationships or user. All the things that I have tried to put into a custom metadata type that I have found out I can't. But yeah, nice. But you can do like field definition to a like an entity field definition from a like a standard or a custom field from the entity definition object.
Yeah. So that lookup, I mean, the field types, huge that we started getting more field types than we had access to in custom setting. Actually, declarative. So many of our viewers may have heard of an app, Declarative Lookup Rollup Summaries. Probably Gosh, if Andrew
I've
Fawcett is
used
known for
that.
anything, he will go down in infamy, not in infamy, but in infamy for Dolores, as it's colloquially called in my circles. So declarative lookup rollup summaries is a way for you to only have lookup references to other objects, but then from that parent, go back and roll up just like a master detail rollup would be, but without having the requirement of a master detail, whether that be for ownership or sharing or what have you, right? Just maybe you just had a bad experience with master detail and want to stay away from it. So I've actually got, give you an example of one of the, what's a good one? So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen real quick. It's always a good day when I open VS Code on a show. And let's look at this first. Sorry about my squinting. Okay, so you'll see here, this is an SFDX project. You can see my screen, right, Meg?
Yes, I can.
Very nice. Okay, so this is an SFDX project, and you'll notice down here in the objects, no, it's not going to be in objects because this Dolores, it's a managed installed. We'd use the installed version of declarative lookup rollup summaries. So that one won't be there. But then this other risk assessment custom metadata type would be in objects. Let's just double check that. Is that there? Risk assessment _MDT. So cool.
Mm-hmm.
But now in Dolores, you'll see we've got this number of sites field, and this is the record. So this is your custom metadata record of type, was it Dolores lookup rollup summary 2, right? And then in here you just have whether it's active or not, this and that. But that's great because before the ability to handle these records programmatically, I think in Apex, it wasn't an option to use it for someone else to customize this as easily. So now we can package these records of even a managed custom metadata type for Dolores and deploy them or move them in between sandboxes and scratch orgs.
Now, question, for those custom metadata types, can those be updated using Apex?
Funny you mentioned. I'm not 100% sure, but I was just going to show you how you could programmatically create them. So yes, you can deploy these, but sometimes we want to keep things in custom metadata records that have IDs or values that are specific to an org, right? Like you'll have a production value for something and a sandbox value for something. And if you spin up a new scratch org, you'll need to create whatever the value for that. So something I've run into a lot for that consideration is account IDs, report IDs. One of the projects we worked on, it actually, on some custom record page, you could click one of many buttons and it would take you to a report that evaluated some data migration stuff. So we stored that record ID in that custom metadata record, but you got to insert the record before it's there, right? Or for a brand new report, you're creating that in each org up the chain. And even if you're just working in prod and sandboxes with something like a report that doesn't change, like a new record type ID, right? You got to get it up before everything gets matched. So for instance, right here, let's say we've got a custom metadata type system.debug setting, right? And this is where we keep stuff in our Salesforce app, which completely exists to help customize the application. So you would get your data that you want out of the database or create it. And then here, what you're looking at right here is essentially creating a metadata container, right, of, and then the custom metadata. This is like the whole record. So here's the whole record. Think of that as pointing to which object custom metadata type we're dealing with. And then here would be setting 2 fields on that. right? You've got your system.debug account ID. We're going to set that to the record we queried. And then there's some other, let's say there's, today it's foo and tomorrow it's bar or baz. We could change that. And then insert, we can enqueue a deployment. I'm not sure. I think to update this, I would, how about you do my fact checking? In order to update this, you would just duplicate the name, right? Use the same name of a custom metadata record with the same type and then the same record master label, sort of. That's what this is, right? But then, yeah, I can't imagine that it would block you from updating those values if the name matches, right? So similar to pushing from a sandbox to another org. If you renamed something in the sandbox, it's just adding it in prod. Always a fun post-deploy step there. Because nobody wants to deploy destructive changes to prod. That's just scary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So when it comes to updating types and records, if your Apex code is in the same namespace as a protected metadata type or their records, you can update the types and records. To modify records from Apex, you must use the metadata package in Apex. If you delete a protected component that was part of a release package, you can't create another record with that name again.
Oh, it's a trigger. Manage the package trigger. Boo. And then also, so everything up here is sort of, standard out of the box. You've got the metadata namespace with these classes, deploy container and custom metadata value. But then down here, some of you might be wondering, well, what's that? Well, it is an implementation of an interface for this. So this was an inner class. That's why it's
what? So you're showing us VS Code still, dude.
Yeah. So I took you
to
a.
I thought you were showing us. I thought you were showing us an interface. So I was waiting for a screen for an interface.
Oh, not a UI. Come on, Meg.
Sorry, dude. I was looking at the information you told me to look
this
up.
This ain't console.log.
Half listening. I was half listening, boy.
So this implementation in the interface in the metadata namespace deploy callback. Right. This is I just noticed that I copied these from different code bases. So, you've got public class, whatever I'm calling my metadata deploy callback. And then
points to Mark. He got the question right, by the way.
Nice. Thank you for checking our stream, by the way. Okay.
Of course, I've been chatting with him this whole time. Thank you. I pay attention to our chat.
So
okay, one time I paid attention to the chat. You're welcome, Mark.
You'll
notice what happens to me now.
It may make you nervous that this is deploy callback, and so callbacks aren't synchronous. So I would say the one gotcha about this is, number one, it does have to be run in a separate context. I think, and I've not needed to do this in a test, because once you populate the scratch org, the custom metadata records that you have set up are accessible in test context as well as non-test context. But so I've never had to do this in a test context, but you get that same setup and non-setup stuff in the same go. If you've never gotten that problem before, if you try to create a new user and then try to create an account, or vice versa, you can't do those two things out of order. Kind of like
mixed DML, man.
Mixed DML, there we go. Just kind of like DML and call outs, right? You just gotta make sure your ducks are in a row with that. So meaning that if you had a script that was gonna get a scratch org ready with all this stuff and put brand new records into the system and then get IDs of some of those and create those custom metadata records, it would need to be in a different sort of like anonymous run, or SFDX Apex execute. And if it fails, right, like that, this is just going to go, and then unless you're catching it, you'll notice in the code over here, not really catching it. And because it's asynchronous, I'm not even sure that you would just have to continue polling on that. Long story short, if those records fail, it will fail silently if you're running a script from the command line, let's say, to set up your scratch org. But you can do this in Apex, which was it 2 years ago, was a pipe dream. So
it's so exciting the more that Salesforce keeps adding and the cooler stuff that they keep giving us for the superpowers to do.
yeah,
Sorry.
it can get
I
a
just
little
gotta say it every
daunting.
time.
It'll get a little daunting with the volume of
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
sometimes, but yes, it's awesome to find
I
new
get you.
stuff. Yep. I've just gotta go through the release notes and do the Marie Kondo. Does this bring joy? So that I can have my little
I
favorite.
just saw your favorite. It's the pick list for the country, for the state and country. I'm gonna send you the link so that you can go and set that on up.
I think it was just kind of, well, because then that was before state and country pick lists rolled out natively, or no, is that shortly after that? I forget if
I think the state and country pick list came out before.
okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah, I just remember seeing that and kind of going, but they have state and country pick lists already. I could see though, not that I know at all, but I could see how implementing that might have followed a similar structure to how, like, what custom metadata types and records do versus maybe whatever they've got running state and country pick lists for that out of the box feature. So yeah, those are our three main ways. I'm trying to think if there's anything else for custom metadata types that we missed. You can create them in the UI, which is nice. So you create.
So the one thing, I was going to say one other thing to point out is that list custom settings and custom metadata types both have page layouts. Definitely something to keep in mind is that you're going to have a page layout with both of those.
But not list views for custom settings, I remember.
Not list views. You're going to have a page.
Oh my god, it's alphabetical, right? Which is really a bummer when you've got, what is that? Several times I've done some sort of like data mapping or whatever, where you've got source object, source field, target object, target field, and then field always comes
oh my gosh,
first.
That's my favorite. So you're gonna have you do have list views for list custom settings, because I've done that.
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
But,
no, yeah, you're right. No, we do. There's no page. There is a page layout, isn't there? I am Googling.
Stop sharing, Joan. Ready, go.
Page layout, list custom setting. It's going to be yes. Page layout for list custom settings. It's an idea. Here it is. The page layout should be modifiable. It's not modifiable, is what it is.
Okay, got it. Oh, yeah. It plops it. Yeah, it's last added. All of them.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd much rather. Well, what was the thing I was going to complain about? Oh, message channels. Have you done like Lightning data service or Lightning message channels with LWC? It's something. It's a pub sub model for being able to send whatever IDs of updated records or something.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I've done that.
And
we've done that.
You cannot make a message channel in the UI. It has to just be XML saved, deployed up to the org. But I'm sure that sooner than we know, we'll have a nice little extra nav item in setup.
Whoa, I see it now.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. Anything else we want to point out?
I'm trying to think if we missed something with hierarchy and list custom settings. Probably not. I mean,
look at that. Lightning message service has issues in the winter 21 preview.
Good thing I did that whole project last quarter.
There you go. Nice. Thank you, Mark.
Yes. I think that's shoot. Go config.
Yeah. If you're going to do translations, you use import and export, and you can always use override. Make sure that if you're doing translations inside your community builder, that you also make sure to use the builder XML file in addition to the translation workbench and custom labels for your community. Yeah. Oh, and don't forget the fact that you can now translate your chatter feed. Boom.
Nice. Does that mean I can replace DUDE with DOOD?
Oh, absolutely. You can totally do whatever you want. Dude.
That's pretty sweet.
Where's my car? That's such a dad comment.
Sweet.
So my dad right there.
Yeah. Well, is there any, upcoming events or little side notes before we
So that
send
is
our...
a great point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I want to point out that we have Oaktown Dreamin' this Friday, ladies and gentlemen. This Friday, all peoples. So exciting. It's going to be from 9 a.m. Pacific until noon. It is a great event talking about equality and inclusion in tech. That is oaktowndreamin.org/sign-up/ or just oaktowndreamin.org and click on the sign up button. We would love to see some more people there. I am going to be an attendee. I am not presenting, but I am attending because I can't wait. And props. So excited. Thank you so much to the event planners and those that are attending and those that are presenting. It's going to be awesome. Quality and inclusion in tech. Woo! There is also a run walk that goes with Oaktown Dreamin'. And you can do either 50 miles or 130 miles. And it's going to be just awesome. I'm going to do it. I'm so doing it. Please join us. Thank you.
I grew up a half an hour east of Oakland. I'll be there.
Virtually?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yay, hip hip hooray. And then other events that are going on. So Northeast Dreamin' just happened. And then that was just this past week. And then I just actually had this open. The other one that I wanted to bring up, hold on, I started clicking on a bunch of stuff because I got all sidetracked. I was like, I want to see what else is available. Here we go. We have Oaktown Open, and this was just community conferences. Yeah, that's the big one that's going on right now. Also, there is a brand new Salesforce Saturday group for architects that has started for Road to CTA. Please make sure that you join this group within Chatter. So I run it. So shameless self-promotion, but it's very exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've had our first event, so sorry to cancel on Saturday. I was down all weekend with migraine, but we are back at it next Saturday, and I'm going to put a new meeting on the books to make up for the fact that I was sick this weekend. We're going to be meeting at 8 a.m. for one weekend, then noon Pacific the next weekend, and then an evening meeting following week on a Saturday. For the first few months, will I gauge for attendance? So please feel free to join. Global group, 100% virtual. Does not matter where you are in your journey to architect. All are welcome. Yeah, and I'll drop the link down below as well. And then there is the Uniting Minds at Summer Camp that is coming up as well. And that one is, hold on, I forgot about that one. Uniting Minds Summer Camp. That one just had the speaker call for speakers closed. That one's 10/22/2020, 36 days away. Yet another great opportunity to connect. So this one, they weren't sure whether or not they were going to have it. I just heard the great story was awesome. But they ended up deciding to do it. I think it's going to be great. They did decide to extend the call for speakers to September 19th at midnight. So exciting. And let's blaze a trail together. Love it. Reinventing the virtual Salesforce Tech Conference the way we want it. Beautiful. Please sign up. And that one is also UMC or UMSC.online. So oaktowndreamin.org and UMSC.online. Join your Ohana, have some fun virtually at conferences, and don't forget to support your local user group. October 3rd, join Seattle Women in Tech. Event just posted.
Nice.
Awesome.
And also,
it's gonna be a hands-on workshop.
Look into your local groups first, and absolutely, community group leaders need those, virtual butts and seats to keep our morale high. But also, investigate ones out of your area maybe that are on, topics you enjoy. Might be
Yeah.
these times are the perfect chance to look for some of those more niche groups, like a marketing group or the nonprofit group that you may not have locally. So do go on to
Trailblazer.
trailblazercommunitygroups.com.
Yep. And if
And
there's a specific, and not just a group topic, but a meeting topic. Like I really like Einstein AI, so just search Einstein AI. I like Community Cloud, just search Community Cloud. It doesn't have to be a group, it can be a meeting topic. I was hanging out over in India last couple of weeks, going to their meetings because they had some awesome stuff going on, and it was fun. Go global, everybody. You don't have to be local, go global. Attend all the meetings, all the meetings.
perfect way to practice your Farsi that you've been brushing up on. I'm not even sure if we have any user groups somewhere, but yeah, I mean,
we have
it's
user groups in the Middle East.
great
Yeah.
way to just get out there and see how other groups are run, right? Even if it's going to be virtual now, but how the format is, may even give you some ideas if you're involved with one of your local groups. All
Yeah.
right, with
Love
that,
to see you.
folks, thanks for joining us today.
Follow us on Twitter. I'm system.debug and Megan SF.
And S-Force be with you.
Awesome. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Buttons. Hit the buttons. Lots of buttons.
Hit all the buttons except
All
10
the
pounds.
buttons. Just hit the buttons. Awesome, you guys. Peace out. Thank you so much. It's been real.